to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker joining me as I'm not in tears, but I'm still reeling. Justin, it's been a hard week. Well, I guess what was it, Saturday? It feels like a week.
It's been very, very difficult for me not to consistently send you GIFs or memes all week long.
I mean, and here's the problem is, you're a Wings fan, so, I mean, generally in sports, it's more like you could send me that, and I would say, like, well, I mean, at least my team made the playoffs in the last 5 years, and to that, you would say, at least my team's won the Stanley Cup 4 times in the last 20 years, or 25 years still, more times than, the Leafs have even been to the Stanley Cup Finals.
To the second round.
Yeah. Well, no, the second round, they've been to the second round.
I know, yeah.
But, yeah, there's just not much I can say to a Red Wings fan, I guess I take solace in knowing that, I don't know, it was like the first time that we didn't beat ourselves, maybe in the last couple of years. Like, the first loss to Boston, you'd probably say Boston was the better team. I think the second time, the Leafs up 3-2, they beat themselves. Leafs against the Columbus Blue Jackets. We're just going to throw out the bubble. That was stupid. And then Leafs to Montreal, they threw it away. At least this series was like, yes, they lost 2 in a row. They absolutely could have won Game 6. You get the right bounce and you win. The officiating was, it wasn't the best. It definitely was probably the most controversial in the first round. And then, what are you going to do? Game 7? Freaking, of course, I mean, Tampa Bay, honestly, here's the difference. Tampa Bay spends a first-round pick on Nick Paul, and the Leafs, they don't spend a first-round pick on bringing someone in that could solidify that bottom 6. And Tampa moves on. And that ultimately, that was, in some ways, the difference.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think, look, the reason they're the Stanley Cup champs, right, for the last 2 years because they had that depth scoring on that third line.
I didn't think that ESPN or TNT talked about that enough.
I know, right?
I will say the especially on ESPN, dude, I'm going to be honest. I don't think he's ever going to come on our show, so I'm just going to say this. Like, I thought that John Butchergross was just awful as a play-by-play guy. Just like one of the worst that I've ever heard on in a national broadcast. He was just unlistenable. I did not like it. And I actually really like John Butchergross. I always liked him when he did ESPN stuff in the past. I've got no problems with him. I just did not like, I guess I didn't like his tone. I didn't like much about how he went about his business. I just didn't like it. And it like pissed me off all the more. It actually made me, I pay for the Sling TV or whatever, and so I can watch ESPN. And I actually went and pirated the stream so I could watch Sportsnet because it was so bad I couldn't listen to it anymore.
Yeah, I will say this: I have ESPN Plus, and when I am like, when you like click on a hockey game on ESPN Plus, it'll give you the option. It'll ask you which teams
right, which
network you want to watch. Yeah, and I always, without a doubt, if they're playing a Canadian team, I'll take the Canadian broadcast. Just because one, I mean, the announcers are usually way better at it, but two, it's just they give better camera angles too. And no knock on ESPN, I think they're doing a much better job than with TNT, TBS than what we were getting with NBC.
I think there's great competition between the two. Yeah. I think it's making a better product. And hey, this is year one. I'm willing to give the pass. I just really didn't like John Butchergross as a play-by-play guy.
Fair. Okay.
He can be on an analyst show, a little panel show or something, and be in the whole. I just didn't like it. But even in games where the Leafs were winning, I was not enjoying it. So it had nothing to do with the outcome. I just really didn't like it. But I just felt like everything. Oh my gosh, dude, Keith Jones. That guy has the biggest hard-on for everyone on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Oh my goodness, it was unbelievable how much he wanted Vasilevsky to be alone with him in a hotel room. Like it was crazy. I just couldn't believe the bias on a national broadcast. And I get it's an American team. I get they just won the cup. But, like, it's Tampa. I mean, realistically, in a TV market, the Tampa Bay TV market isn't very big compared to many others. Like, there's a good chance that there were still more Leafs fans watching that game in an American broadcast than there were Tampa Bay fans. At least it would be pretty darn close to the middle. And I just thought that it was very biased towards the Lightning, and I'm not a big fan of that in a national broadcast. In a local broadcast, they would pump the tires of your local team, be frickin' Mickey Redmond, do what you got to do, and just like love on your team. That's fine. But the national broadcast, not a big fan, especially when you've got Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner. Like, there's no shortage of really good players to talk about on the Leafs too. But hey, all right, soapbox. I'm going to tear down the soapbox now, dude.
Okay, yeah. So back to the third line, right? So. Right, there's your difference, in my opinion. And you watch Braden Point go down there in Game 7, and obviously, Nick Paul steps in, and that's where, spending that first-round pick comes in hand.
Yep.
Because now you've got a guy who can fill in both defensively in the face-off circle. You don't really look like you're missing a beat. Obviously, he's, on regular season and, the rest of the series, really, he wasn't much of a factor as far as offensive production. But, this game, that's usually what happens, right? When you need it the most, you get guys outside of those top players that need to step up, and he does it. And you look at guys like David Kampf, Andre Kasha, Michael Bunting. Their production was less than stellar. I mean, I didn't expect all worldly numbers from them, but Nylander, Marner, and Matthews, they stepped up. They did what they could, and
Tavares was very good in the later half of that series. Like Game 6, he basically won it for the Leafs by himself. He should have had that goal in Game 7. The one that was called back. It is a pick play, but it was still a pick kind play. Of like, like, come on, really, like. Would it have really made that much of a difference if he had not picked them? He probably still would have since
scored.
When are we calling that? Dude, that series was like the beginning of that series was just dreadful. Like the officiating in that series just was there was no consistency. It was like an insane amount of calls in the first few games. Each team getting like six power play. Like it was so slow and drudged out because of all these whistles, and it just was bad hockey. And I get you got to still call the rule book, but like there were just it was overly picky. It was like it was more picky than the regular season. And then all of a sudden in Game 6, Game 7, they're like, let's put the whistles away. Tampa Bay's down. Time to put the whistle away. That's just how it felt. But
yeah, and I mean, look, Toronto's special teams weren't really that great. I mean, their power play was only 14.3%, right? I mean, that's an area where, in my opinion, coaching needs to come into play a little bit better there. And so, I know a lot of fans are going to be, I mean, now that it's kind of the dust is settled, right? You're not screaming, blow this team up now because they just can't get past the first round. I think if anything, right, coaching is maybe an area you can look at because 14.3% is just not that great. Only less than 80% on the penalty kill there. And granted, yes, it is Tampa Bay, but still, you got to be a little bit better. You got to shut down that Tampa Bay power play because that's really how they can kill you too. And special teams is usually always a factor in these kind of close series when you have two teams that can really put up a lot of goals. And
yep. Granted, the Florida Panthers are 0% on their power play.
I have no idea how. Like
they're the first team ever, I believe, to win a 7-game series and not score a single power play goal.
Yeah, they. I mean, geez. The Capitals did a great job. There's, no doubt about it. And I think, Andrew Burnett, maybe now we're starting to see, is he really can he really lead a team like this over the hump and get them to the Stanley Cup Finals? I don't know. They looked just god awful against Tampa Bay.
Well, Tampa Bay just did exactly what Washington did to them. They just took they took the mantle and went, okay, you maybe didn't have the talent to beat them in 7, but we do.
Right.
And frankly, Nikita Kucherov, pretty sure he was I heard he was maybe sick in almost the whole first round.
Mm-hmm.
So you weren't even getting a full blown Kucherov, maybe? Like, that's a scary prospect for the Florida Panthers. But I expect they'll be better tonight. If you're listening to this, you may know the score already, and you might be laughing at me. I don't think we'll see another 69 score.
Oh, jeez.
It's so funny. Like, how often do you see a 6-9 score where you're actually looking at the score box and it says 69? It's funny. But yeah, I think that the Panthers and the Leafs are very similar. So to me, Tampa's probably going to play them pretty similarly too. Like, you're going to try and slow them down. They're a fast team, and you just got to take advantage of those spots, like their little mistakes. And they did that in Game 1. We'll see what happens with the rest of that series. I have the Florida Panthers winning in. Did I say? I think I said 7 games.
You said 7, and so did I. And but let me ask you this though. As a Maple Leafs diehard, and I have obviously my thoughts what I would do with this team. But I just want to ask you, now that the dust is settled, you kind of let those emotions. I don't know what the right word would be for it right
simmer?
now, but simmer, yes. If you had free reins, if you were Kyle Dubas, what would you be doing to correct or fix this team, or would you not do anything at all?
Well, I don't think that you can do what I would want to do. And that would be probably it's not so much that I don't like John Tavares, it's that I don't like his cap number, but that's the whole reason why you're not going to get rid of him. So I think you're stuck with him. So there's not much you can do there. I don't want to trade Nylander because he's actually affordable and he's a very good player. Like, you got to have. I mean, last year in the playoffs, he led the team in points. It's not as if Nylander disappears in the playoffs. I'm not worried about Nylander. I think he's paid the correct amount. Like, he's not the problem. To me, the problem is really just that bottom 6. There isn't a whole lot of dynamic talent down there, and I think the reason why is they've just kind of been a little slow to allow some younger players to come up through their system, and I think that it's time to maybe start to expose the Nick Robertsons and like giving these guys a real opportunity to make this team. And they're getting paid not league minimum, but like on their ELC, so you can afford those guys, and that's where I'd like to see the Leafs. I'd like to see their draft picks make waves, and I think that's probably the way that they're going to be able to win going forward. Is the reclamation projects are great. I think it's time to say bye-bye to Jason Spezza. I think it's time to say goodbye to Wayne Simmons. Like, at this point, you don't need those. You don't need the old guys. Old guys with no cup. Like the OGNCs. You don't need them anymore. You don't need those guys to lead you. You've got a core group of guys who can lead you. Now, get younger players around them. Like Bunting this year. I mean, Bunting should be the perfect example. I know he's 25 or 26. But, I mean, he was Calder Trophy candidate, and you put him up with Matthews and Marner, and look what happened to him. So I think you just got to keep on plugging your roster, not necessarily with these really old Grizzly veterans who can't skate worth a lick. Like, you got to just put these young guys in and let speed take over the entire lineup, not just that top 6. So I think it's time for a little bit of youth infusion, and get those veterans out who, frankly, have obviously not helped that much. They haven't helped win around.
Yeah.
So that's realistically what they can do is that you can give your younger guys the opportunity to see what they can do.
Yeah, that's going to be a challenge, right? I mean, finding those guys that can fill in on that bottom 6. And I mean, you look at, right, the team I look at that was up against the cap and really had to be creative and still be competitive, right, was the Chicago Blackhawks, right? When they had Tane and Caves, I mean, they still do, but even when the salary cap was less, they were drafting well and they were finding these guys at minimal cost they would bring in, right, and fill in, and that's how they would be. That's part of their success was getting those cheaper guys to contribute, and that's a challenge for any team, and every team would love to find those guys that can do that on the bottom six for $1.5 million, but there's not a ton of them out there. So yeah, I agree with you. I think obviously if I could do anything, I would jettison Tavares and try to find help elsewhere, but I'm worried that this team might overreact and go trade William Nylander because he's their biggest trade asset and will get you your biggest return.
He's the easiest one to trade, right?
Right. And I mean, for what you're paying him and what he brings offensively, yes, maybe his defensive game isn't really there. And sometimes you watch him on the ice and, he just kind of looks like he's just going through the motions. But other times he looks like he could be a top 15 guy in the league.
He's the best player on the ice.
I know.
He kind of reminds me of? Kind of reminds me of Alex Kovalev.
Ooh.
Alex Kovalev just always, man, that guy could be the best player on the ice. And then other times you were like, where is he? What's happening? And he was just such a frustrating guy to watch. But when he was on, he was on. There was very few guys better than Nylander when he's on. But it's just a matter of that maturing. And I think the Washington Capitals are the perfect example. Look to that and go, they had many heartbreaks. And they did make it out of the first round, but they made it out of the first round. They weren't winning the cups. They weren't winning multiple rounds. It was consistently very frustrating, blowing leads in series, yada, yada. I mean, it's funny that both them and the Leafs have blown a 3-1 series lead to the Montreal Canadiens due to a hot goalie. I think you got to look to them and go, it would be silly to blow this up. And the one mistake you don't want to make is go, let's go and bring in a totally different coach. A totally different, someone who's let's go to the defensive side and make this a really defensive team. No, don't do that. Although I did have, for a second there, had this what if the Leafs could get Barry Trotz? What would that look like?
Right.
But Barry Trotz is not that guy. He's the guy who goes, what do we have? Let's play to our strength and let's go. And hey, let's be responsible defensively. But he was the one who opened the floodgates back up for Ovechkin after being held back by Adam Oates and all that. So
yeah. Let's put him back on the other wing where he actually belongs, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned goaltenders, and I want to ask you before we move on and get away from Toronto because we'll spend all day talking about this. But Mrazek, is he getting bought out? Jack Campbell, is he back as the starter?
I think you got to look for a deal for Mrazek. You got to try to trade him, and I don't think you'll have a ton of issues trying to trade him. Shouldn't be too bad. I don't know that they'll buy him out, but I think they'll try to trade him, and I think they do re-sign Jack Campbell. I think it's a perfect fit. He played amazing in that series.
He didn't win the series. He didn't lose the series for him, but he also didn't steal any games either. So I think again, he's a fine goaltender. I got no problems with him. Yeah, I mean
the game he gets a shutout in, it's a 5-0 game. So it's not his fault they scored a bunch. He still stopped every puck in the game. That's his job. He stopped every puck. But yeah, I don't know that you're going to go out and be able to find a better goaltender in free agency. So I think you lock him up as long as you're not overpaying for him. I think it's a good marriage there. Hopefully it's not a super long deal. Now there's one more thing that I think that the Leafs should do that they won't do. The Leafs must tell John Tavares, we love you. However, we are going to turn this team over to Austin Matthews. He is the leader of the future. You have led these kids and shown them how to be a pro. And it's Austin's turn to take the helm. We're going to give him the captaincy. And we want to just change the culture a little bit. And throw that C onto Austin Matthews' jersey and shake things up. You want to shake things up? That would shake things up. That would make it a little awkward at first, I think. But I think you would see a different level from Austin Matthews. And I think it would take a little pressure off of John Tavares. He could be, he could still be an alternate, and he could just be one of the guys. And
hey, if you got the right voices in that locker room, it won't make a world of difference, right? I mean, it won't hurt you anyways, right?
Right.
And you look at San Jose,
if he's bought in, like if Tavares is like, yeah, I don't need this C to do that, and other people, it just I just think that it's his team. It needs to be turned over to him now, and he carried that team in the playoffs. He's unbelievable. I mean, him and Marner couldn't have done any more than what they did in that series, aside from scoring in Game 7. But I mean, oh no, they did. They did score that goal, I think. But anyways, we'll talk Leafs again. Other series that we didn't get to talk about. Well, you know what? Do you want to just roll into the current series and we'll just let the two teams that won we'll just throw back to the series that they came from.
Why not?
We'll do something like that just to move it along because we spent 20 minutes on the Leafs. I'm not mad about it, and neither is my brother who's listening right now. But let's just go to that Battle of Alberta because that is I alluded to the 69 score. Of course, Calgary winning Game 1 9-6, and both those teams narrowly escaping their underdog opponent, the Calgary Flames beating the Dallas Stars, and the Edmonton Oilers, the LA Kings. What do you think of this series? I mean, 15 goals in Game 1.
Well, listen, you know what? I'm not surprised. I knew there was. Actually, I should say I'm a little surprised. I expected maybe a 5-4, 4-3 type game.
Dude, but Calgary could not score a goal against the Dallas Stars.
Gosh, what was it? I read that they only scored. There was 14 goals scored through the first 4 games of their series with Dallas, and now they go out and score 15 in this game. I mean, it's crazy, right? They turned it on, and I mean, look, Calgary has got way more depth than the Edmonton Oilers as far as the forward group is concerned, and even on the back end for that matter. I think Mike Smith will be better. Jacob Markstrom will be better. He let in some just awful goals right over the glove side. I just remember turning on the game. It was, 3-0 or something like that, and just a simple shot. He's protecting the near side of the post with the blocker, hugging it, and just it goes right over his glove hand like he didn't even try. It looked like I don't know what was going on, but man, it's I think it'll be a totally different game for Game 2 for sure. They won't be scoring that many goals, and I think as the series goes on, it's going to get a little bit more chirpy. Lucic is probably going to start, or Kachuk it was. I loved it when he mentioned he was chirping Kane about money situations, like, hey, can I borrow some money? And, dude, I was just dying.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Dying. And the best thing about this whole entire Game 1 was Brady Kachuk, in my opinion. I don't know if you saw it either, but so after Matthew Kachuk hits the hat trick, Brady's just cheering on. And, of course, he's every once in a while you'll catch him on TV and he's screaming, go, Sens, go. But he's freaking walking around with a Bud Light in one hand and turns to go back up the stairs. And what makes him a legend, in my opinion, is in his 2 back pockets, he's got 2 more Bud Lights stuffed in there. Yes. Bro is having the time of his life.
Yes, that's so funny. I love it.
Dude, I love it. But, I mean, look, this series is going to be fun. Connor McDavid is going to do his damnedest to will this team past Calgary. Honestly, I've got Calgary winning this in 6. You've got them in 7. And there's a reason we both picked Calgary. They're just deeper. They're better coached, in my opinion. And really, it's just, if you had to come down to goaltending too, I mean, Mike Smith is going to be okay, but I don't think he's going to steal you any games because this Calgary offense is a lot more high-flying than LA's was. So,
dude, Connor McDavid has 18 points in 8
He's killing
it. I mean, he is on pace. If he were to go and he's pretty darn close to being in that Gretzky record range for playoff points, which I believe is 48 points or something like that.
At this pace, I mean, he could get there if he can find a way past Calgary. I mean, in 3 rounds, he could probably hit 30 plus points. So,
right, yeah, it's which is anyone getting more than 30 points in a playoff year. 47 is how many Gretzky had in 84-85 when they won the cup. Thing is, he did that in 18 games.
18.
The next most is Lemieux at 44, and he did that in 23 games. And then Gretzky did it again, 43 in 19 games, 40 in 24 games, and 38 in just 16 games.
Wow.
So, the highest scoring player not on the Oilers or named Mario Lemieux is actually Evgeny Malkin in 08-09 when they beat the Red Wings. He had 36 points in 24 games.
Wow, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's and then the next most is Kucherov in 1920. He had 34 points. Only 7 goals though. A paltry 7 goals.
A paltry.
So, when it comes to that Calgary Edmonton series, I mean, you got to think Game 2 is going to be different because. Yeah, is Mike Smith going to get pulled in the first 6 minutes of the game? No. 2 goals in the first 51 seconds of a game are just that's not going to happen again. The Oilers won't get caught off guard that way. And I look at this series and I picked Calgary, but man, it just seems like this year. McDavid and Draisaitl are kind of playing on a different playoff level. Like they're playing like they do in the regular season in the playoffs for the first time.
Well, apparently Draisaitl is hurt, right? He's not 100% healthy. So, imagine if he, gets healthy or figures it out. My gosh.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, the fact that Edmonton. Almost, they made it a game. They make it 6, or they tie the game at 6. I mean, it's just unbelievable coming back. But they obviously they just couldn't hold on in the third period there. But I mean, this series could go anywhere. We might see. There's a possibility we're going to get 50 goals, 60 goals in this series, which is crazy. If we were to get 50 goals in like a 7-game series, would be a pretty remarkably high-scoring series. That'd be like 7 goals a game. Well, that's pretty high-scoring for the playoffs, too, but we both have Calgary in 7. So we both have Calgary in 7, and we both have Florida in 7. Or no, you have Calgary in 6.
Yeah, but still close enough.
And then you picked Florida in 7, so you said?
Got them in 7.
I know you told me you were going to surprise me with your picks, so I don't know.
Yeah, the next 2 series are where it's at there, but
yeah, okay, all right. So Avalanche and the St. Louis Blues. Avalanche kind of cruised past the Preds. We talked about that series already, and the Blues they end up kind of dusting off the Minnesota Wild and winning it in 6 games. Did you say 6 games, St. Louis, in that first series?
No, I said Minnesota would win it in 7.
Oh,
you
okay.
had St. Louis in 6.
I said, yeah, that's right. It was me, wasn't it? That wasn't actually a dig. I totally, off the top of my head, I got some documents somewhere saying it, but I'm glad you remember. You've got a better memory than I do.
I've got it written down here right on my desk.
Oh, so. Beautiful. I love. So you keep that at your desk to look at it and be like, freaking A, Mark's ahead of me in this series.
Well, I kept track of points, right? If you call the correct team, and then you get a point. If you call the correct amount of games, you get a point.
Okay.
So you're beating me 10-8 right now. So I gotta catch up.
Well, so if you pick the right game, the right amount of games, but the team loses, you score 1 point.
No. You got to get the right team too.
Okay. I was gonna say. Yeah. Okay. So this St. Louis Blues Avalanche series. I mean, obviously, Game 1 it was a fantastic game, going to overtime, and now things you're gonna settle in here a little bit. Like that was, to me, that was very typical Game 1. Like the team that maybe has played a little bit more is kind of on. They scored early in the first period and got things going for themselves. Jordan Kyrou is he's just like there's not really any other player in the league like Jordan Kyrou right now, scoring that power play goal. And I mean, really, overtime was just a nice little wrister from the blue line by Josh Manson. But you wonder, was that the game that the St. Louis Blues needed to have to win this series? Like, can they do this every time against the Avs? Because I got to think that there's some beast games coming from the Avs.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was shocked to see St. Louis take apart Minnesota so easily, but of course they did not get quite the goaltending I wanted. And
personally, I wasn't at all. It's what I predicted.
Yeah, I mean, shit. The St. Louis is look. St. Louis is getting production from like the regular season. It was Pavel Bunevic. It was Jordan Kyrou. Robert Thomas, and now in the playoffs, it's these guys and Ryan O'Reilly and David Perron and Tarasenko. They're all clicking, which is why they just rolled through Minnesota so easily. And so I think if these guys continue to roll, Jordan Binnington looks like he's taken it to a whole nother level. Like he's back to like maybe even he looks a little bit better than he did when he won the Cup. So, if he can sustain that type of production, I don't think he will against Colorado, but if he can get close to what he was doing, this is going to be a long 7-game series, I think. So
okay, yeah. Go ahead.
I did pick St. Louis to win this in 7. So
woo, here's the thing. Last year, right about this time, the Avalanche swept the round 1. They win game 1 against the Vegas Golden Knights, and we were all like, "How are the Avs ever going to lose?" Like who could beat this powerhouse of a? They're done.
All right.
Oh, they lost. I mean, we're right there. We're at that point again. Avs are in the exact same spot they were in last year. Won the first 5 games of the playoffs. Now the big question is, does this team fall and falter back? Is it in its head? I mean, they have a lot of the similar questions that the Leafs have, where, can they beat the big beast of a team in that next round? So I look at this team. I just don't see how they go and lose this series based on what they've been through, the depth that they have. I mean, the level that their guys are going at. As long as Nazem Kadri doesn't try to club anybody, they should be fine.
Well, that's the question mark, right? I mean, if Kadri stays in the series, they have a good chance at coming out on top. But I mean, look, they were playing a third-string goaltender in Nashville. Now they go up against a guy who's got a Stanley Cup ring in net. So it's whether or not those depth guys for Colorado, because we know they're big 4 or 5 guys. McKinnon, Landeskog, Rantanen, Kadri, and Makar are going to show up. But it's those other guys, can they step up and do it? And, right, Josh Manson gets that goal in Game 1 to win it in overtime. So when you get, offensive output from those guys to contribute, you're gonna have a pretty good shot. So, if guys like Lehkonen, JT Compher, and, Burakovsky can show up, they should be able to handle this St. Louis team, I think.
But you just said that St. Louis was going to win.
Yeah, and I don't think these guys are going to show up for Colorado. So.
Okay, I see. Okay. I mean, I got to give it to. I got to think that at this point, Kadri's over his like, I'm going to run guys through the wall in the playoffs. Like, it just, you just got to be extra careful. He's so important. I mean, he had 4 points in the first round. He's basically a point per game guy and a necessary component to force the opposition to not play their best players against that top line every time, right? Like,
well, yeah, he's in a contract year too. So you think if he goes out and gets suspended again, like teams are going to just shell out the check, the cash for him,
right?
If they think he's going to get suspended all the time.
Yeah, just don't check anyone. Just let him go. Let him go on by. Okay, so who do you have in this? Oh, sorry, you have the Blues in 7. I think I picked the Avs in like 6.
6, you did.
So I'm still banking on that. I don't see the Blues. I know they have great depth. I think that Kemper will probably steal one here. I'm sure Binnington will steal one. He almost stole Game 1. I just think, especially now, like giving predictions after a game too, like knowing what the total is there, St. Louis had to get that first game. They had to steal one. And
well, they got to get Game 2, right? You can't go down 2 games to none against this Colorado team now. It's just you're toast if you do.
Yeah, and I just wonder, was that the opportunity that they missed? That
yeah, and you look, I actually caught a stat in round 1, teams that teams that lost that first game they went 4-4 in the series. So half the teams still managed to come back and win their series. So, again, it's not out of the realm of possibilities, especially when you look at, how deep. I mean, look, LA and Dallas, maybe you can make an argument, or for Nashville, those three teams maybe didn't belong, and there's a reason they all lost. So the rest of these teams, I mean, in my opinion, even Washington, they're over 100 points. I mean, there's a reason they're in the playoffs. So you can't count any of these teams out.
That's very true. I mean, we had the most points ever as a combination for all the playoff teams, the most points ever. So these playoff teams are more talented than they've ever been, because they're just, I mean, yes, they were beating up on lower talented teams, but I think that these high-end teams are just, they just have it. And there is not a bad team in the second round. Like, sometimes you get that one team that sneaks through and you're like,
It's like Arizona in 2013.
Don't know if one of you does not belong here.
Right.
So I think all the teams are very good. Almost every team, I think, could win the Stanley Cup. And it wouldn't shock me. It would surprise me if the Oilers won the Cup after what they went through. They're probably the one team that you could put into that. Like, it would be pretty shocking to see the Oilers actually win the Cup this year. But pretty much everyone else, you go, I mean, they all, like, even though the Rangers weren't necessarily there in the beginning of the year, the pieces they added throughout the year, especially Andrew Kopp, they've put themselves into a good position. I don't know if they can beat Carolina, which is where we're going next. But they managed to sneak by, basically steal a series from Pittsburgh because Sidney Crosby missed a game.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that for sure. And then I think, in my opinion, I think putting Tristan Jarry in there maybe was a mistake. They were getting good goaltending out of Louis Domingue, and not that Tristan Jarry really cost them the game, but maybe rushing him in there. But again, your backs are against the wall, so what are you going to do, right?
Hard position, and you'd rather lose with Jarry,
right? Absolutely,
than you would with Domingue if you have.
Because if you lose with Domingue, then everybody's coming back. Well, why didn't you play Jarry? You had him.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it was just kind of a. I mean, what are you going to do? You lose an OT in Game 7. I mean, you're as close as you're going to get. The Pittsburgh Penguins have had a few times losing Game 7 in OT. I think they lost Game 7 in OT to Ottawa. When was that? In 2015?
15?
Was it 2015?
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's right. It was the year before they won the Cup.
Right. Yep.
Or no, I lied. No, sorry. Pittsburgh won in overtime. I was like, wait, did Ottawa go to the Stanley Cup Finals? No, they didn't. Oh, Pittsburgh won in Game 7 in overtime against Ottawa. There we go. Somebody was yelling at me from sitting in their car like, you dumb piece of shit. I'm rewriting history over here. That Rangers-Carolina series, I actually think that it's a really good matchup for the Rangers because they both sort of have this old school mentality in a lot of ways. I just think Carolina has maybe too much speed in the end. That Game 1 was tight, and Carolina almost didn't even find their way to OT, but they managed to pull it out. But I think that they are just maybe a little too fast for the Rangers and too deep.
Well, so here's the thing, right? I look at that Pittsburgh Rangers series, and I mean, early on, Shesterkin, he was a little rusty. I don't know what was going on with him, but he managed to figure it out. You kind of saw about halfway through that series that he sort of found his game back again, and he got it together. And obviously, that's ultimately why they came out on top. But I think one thing that Pittsburgh had, and the reason they were able to go 7 games against New York that I don't think Carolina has, is Pittsburgh had a top line that just dominated. Yeah. Gensel and Crosby just took over early in that series, and that's why I think this series went 7 games, right? If Crosby and Gensel hadn't played that way, it would have been a lot shorter, in my opinion. And when you look at Sebastian Aho is great, but I think those first 2 periods of Game 1, it was probably the worst Carolina's had all season long, including the playoffs. And, they look non-existent out there and really look like, hey, look, Rod Brind'Amour had to shuffle up all of his lines. He had to move Jasper what's his face? To the top. He had to shake up the top line. Teravainen was up there.
Yeah.
They ended up, having basically that was the difference maker. They kind of got it back together. You saw them have a little bit more jump in their step and ultimately tie the game up and win it in overtime, which I felt bad for Shesterkin, that overtime goal going off Lindgren's stick right out in front of him. I mean, what are you going to do as a goaltender?
Right.
And you could just see the defeat on his face. Like, what? This is the way it ends? Like, are you freaking kidding me? Shesterkin in that third period was otherworldly. He was just standing on his head. I mean, that first save against Aho was just tremendous. And then, of course, the rebounds right there. And no Rangers defender anywhere to, level a check or hit the stick and nothing. But ultimately for me, though, I did pick the Rangers to win this one in 6. You had Carolina in 6.
Yep.
I do like the depth a little bit more for the Rangers at the forward group. Now, I think defensively speaking, Carolina's got the better forward group. But offensively, I really think that kid line of Capocacco, who just missed, he's going to be kicking himself for the next couple days or maybe weeks, even if they lose this series, because that wide open net he missed in game 1. But I think Capocacco, Lafreniere, and Hedl are going to be the difference maker in this series, because I think these top two lines might go toe for toe. But
Lafreniere is kind of he's showing up at the right time. He's kind of starting to show why he was a top pick. And yeah, he's if he can become that here in the playoffs, hit that next level, well, the Rangers are an even more dangerous team. One thing about Carolina, they in 8 games, 14 different players have scored a goal for the Hurricanes. That's nice. That's crazy. I mean, that is they've had 4 defensemen have scored goals in those 8 games, and one of them have scored twice, Jacob Slavin. But yeah, it's just, guys they're putting up points. It's very spread out. Nobody has more than 3 goals in those 8 games. There's 4 guys with 3 goals, 5 guys with 3 goals in 8 games, which is, that's unusual. Especially since much of what we've seen is there's that top line that dominates, and then you're just hoping that the rest of the players can kind of just make up, not let in goals. So yeah, there's I guess the New York Rangers they have 13 players who have a goal in 8 games as well. So they're on equal terms in that sense. They've got scoring coming from all over the place, and their defensemen. There's only 3 defensemen with a goal, but of course you've got Adam Fox with 3 of them, so that always helps.
Yeah, look, outside of Shesterkin, the X factor for me is going to be the special teams. The Rangers through 8 games they're clicking at 30%, and Carolina only at 13.5. So if Carolina stays out of the box, that could be a huge X factor. And then, looking at, other team stats here, the Rangers are the worst face-off team in the playoffs right now.
Yeah, I was noticing that in game 1, there was a couple, like Jordan Stahl was like 70%. And, right. And I think so. And Aho was everyone was above 50%.
And that's something Carolina and Pittsburgh all do well, right? Crosby, Malkin, Carter, these are good face-off guys, and then Jordan Stahl, Aho, again, great face-off guys. So if you're the Rangers, you gotta win those timely draws, and that could end up costing them, a couple goals here if it gets down to the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, it was Stahl at 73%, Trocheck was 70%, Aho 55%. Definitely dominating in the face-off circle. Andrew Kopp was 67%, so. Maybe
and he's a winger.
Maybe they, yeah. So he probably took 3 faceoffs in my stats here. It doesn't tell me, but yeah,
he did play center in Winnipeg. So why not just move Strome to the wing and let Kopp take your draws?
Sure.
Or even move Strome down to the third line and shake things up if you need to, but which I don't think they need to do quite yet. But still,
no, yeah. thing is for the Rangers, they scored that goal really early in Game 1, 7:07 into the first, and no goals since then. So, we're talking basically almost a full 60 minutes without a goal here, and their offense wasn't exactly dynamite later in that game. Carolina was controlling the play. Antti Ranta was good when he needed to be, but they were definitely the better team later. The Rangers win if Shesterkin stands on his head. That's what it is. There's no way that the Rangers win having to go to Georgiev.
Oh no, absolutely not. Yeah, but I don't think it's going to get to the point where Carolina's going to score a lot of goals and Shesterkin gets pulled. I think Shesterkin's the guy they're just going to ride till the end. Even if they're down 3-1, they're still going to ride Shesterkin.
Yep. Oh, you should. Yeah, I just mean obviously if Georgiev is in, that means that they're getting blown out. So,
right. Well, yeah, absolutely. And again, on the other end too, Ratna, he's looked good. He hasn't been like all worldly and great, but he's made the timely saves. He hasn't given up soft goals for Carolina, and so he's done what he needs to do as a backup. And he's really just a 1B. So as long as he can stay healthy, I think they'll be all right.
Yep. That's that is it. By the way, what do you think of? Oh boy, this is a weird one. There's a particular okay. So, what do you think about the fact that the coach needs to challenge questionable goals and you get a penalty on it? Because it's kind of come back to bite a few teams in the playoffs, and it's starting to come up that people aren't really thrilled with it. Like the NFL, they just go, "Oh, you scored a touchdown? We're just going to check it," and they always check for every touchdown to be a goal. And now you have, whereas the NHL, it's like you got to be afraid to make sure and check it. Do you think that is a bad look? That the NHL, or just like in the third period or something, that the NHL just doesn't automatically check goals? Like, why are we penalizing someone for checking a goal?
Yeah, that's a very decisive topic.
It's coming up because of the what happened in the Florida Panthers game. Right.
And I think when Andrew Burnett challenged and then they get scored on the ensuing power play, it takes the wind out of you, right? And it can kill any momentum or attempt at coming back. But so for me, the way I look at it, right, the NFL, the NHL, the reason they have these challenges, or the reason they penalize the NHL anyways, is because they want to keep the game flow going, right? They don't want coaches to constantly challenge or slow the game down when they don't really need to. But for me, I think instead of giving a team an ensuing power play if you get it wrong, I think you should probably just penalize them with they lose their timeout like the NFL, right?
Yeah.
You get it wrong, you lose your timeout.
Right.
Okay, cool. Now you don't put the other team, they just scored a goal, and cool. Now not only do they have all this momentum and just energy, but then they're going to go out and get a man advantage. So now they're more than likely going to probably – I'd like to see the number to see how many times teams score on the power play after a failed challenge by an NHL coach. I bet that number would be probably above 30%, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
So for me, I think they should just lose their timeout, assuming they haven't taken. 95% of coaches just wait till the last couple minutes anyways. So more than likely you still have the timeout. So you lose that. Which doesn't necessarily hurt you, but, more often than not, if you're challenging a goal, it's because you're behind, and then, you need that timeout at the end anyway. So there is something at stake still.
Right. And you would use that timeout, and that timeout would, quote unquote, delay the game a little bit, you know? So I think it's NFL, it's the fourth quarter is where they check every touchdown. And then in the playoffs, they check every touchdown regardless of the quarter. And it just seems like, okay, I get you. Regular season, I get you. I got you. Who cares? Not who cares, but in the regular season, maybe you don't need the NHL looking at every single goal. That would take a long time. I get it. Like the NFL, there's not as many games every day, right? Like there's only so many games on at once. NHL, right. there can be 15 games on in a matter of like a 12-hour span. Well, I guess that's the case in the NFL too, but it's only one day. Like, it's not every day of the week where you've got multiple. Anyway, so there'd be a lot more to do for the NHL. But maybe it's just that, you make it so that maybe in the third period that goals are just checked. Or you have to give up your timeout, whatever. But in the playoffs, just make it so that every goal is checked. It's not going to slow it down. All they have to do is just go, yep, it's a goal. Like, usually 9 times out of 10, it's an easy call. Like, it was a goal, no problem. But now I will say, maybe what you do is you say, we will, in the playoffs, we will go after every goal, like goalie interference. Was it over the line? Blah, blah, blah. But we will not do the blue line. That is, like, you could make that the one that is more, like, still have to challenge. Like, was it offside 3 minutes ago before the team went into the zone? Oh, yep, it was. And you got to challenge that. They're not going to go back and look at that. I'd say that would be a fair medium. Make the NHL make the call on goaltender interference, whether the puck crossed the line, and then make the coach have to challenge the blue line portion. I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know. Regular season, the checking the goal thing doesn't really bother me. They don't have to. We've got video coaches on every team, so they can rewind it back really quick. It's super easy to, well, not super easy, but it doesn't take a lot of time, right? But I think during the playoffs, they should be checking every goal.
Yeah.
And there shouldn't be any penalties if you get the call wrong on a challenge. That's
agree.
Just the way I feel.
Yep, I agree. Well, we'll see if that impacts any further game. It's just kind of silly. Like, I guess in the one sense, it is one of the very obvious ways that a coach can impact the game. But maybe it shouldn't have that kind of impact. Justin, any final thoughts before we sign off here?
Oh boy, you know what? I love you. I don't really know what else to say here at this point.
That's fine. I'll take that. I mean, I guess we'll say sayonara to someone that we figured would get fired, and that's Pete DeBoer.
Oh yes, very true. Yeah,
you can't lose in Vegas and stay a coach. That's pretty clear.
Guess not.
So he's out.
John Hines is going to get extended, I heard too. So.
Hines got extended,
yep.
And I heard Barry Trotz has met with the Winnipeg Jets. Possibly that was a Elliot Friedman thing, and I don't know who is. Oh, Lane Lambert. He is the head coach of the New York Islanders.
Yeah, they bumped. I mean, he's been on everybody's radar for the last couple of years, so that's no surprise. But it's funny when you say you want a voice change, but really you're bringing in a guy who was underneath that voice for so long, so there's still going to be some of that old voice there.
Right. Which in some respects is, if really you just want to change the face, but you want the same system, it's not a bad hire.
Yep.
Not a bad hire.
Sheldon Keefe, staying or getting canned?
No, he'll stay, and they basically came out and said that he was going to stay. Brendan Shanahan said that he believes in what the coaching staff and management staff is doing, and I think they've got one more year. I think this next year will be like a true, boy, you got to break through or you're going to be gone.
I think that's a good call.
And I think it's a. Now, I don't know if Dubas would get fired. I think that Dubas might be given another coach. I mean, it's like an impossible situation. You're planning for the next 5 years by giving out some of these contracts, and then COVID happens, and probably out of any team in the NHL, the Leafs are affected the most.
Well, listen,
based on the timing of those deals.
The fourth best team in the NHL. If you can't go out and beat Tampa Bay, I mean, that's understandable, but you've got a good enough team on the ice that if you can't get it done at this point, it's not because you don't have the right personnel, right? It's because the coaching just can't adjust.
Right.
And I
felt that way in Game 7. It felt like he wasn't adjusting properly, and I hope he learns from his mistakes that you can't just keep on smacking your head against the wall. You got to switch something up. So I think they'll what I wouldn't mind would be maybe like just go out and snag some veteran guy who he maybe was a head coach in the past, doesn't want to be anymore, and he can come in and do like work on those types of things, like work on an alternate system that you can switch to when you need to switch something up. Like, it just seems like maybe the Leafs need that, maybe a new voice, but not actually get rid of the head voice. Just, kind of swap out an assistant, which I know seems like they do that every year. Mostly because, hey, you're on a pretty good team and you do well, you're probably going to get hired somewhere else.
Yep.
But seems like from a 5-on-5 standpoint, they needed to make adjustments that they just didn't make. And we'll see what they can do here in the offseason. I mean, there's a lot of teams gunning for them. There's a lot of teams gunning for those playoff spots. So it's there's never a guarantee that you're going to be there. So you just got to keep on winning. Or in the Leafs case, just win for the first time. Be great. All right. Well, Justin, enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy those couple of games on tonight. And to our listeners, thanks for listening this week, and we'll talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.